Hello and welcome to the Times of India. You're watching Global Pulse with me, Neha Khanna. Our big focus tonight. The youth in Nepal has erupted in anger. Capital Kathmandu is under siege. In the line of fire is the KP Sharma Oli government, and it's being called the Gen Z revolution. At least 16 people were killed today and more than 100 wounded in violent clashes as angry protesters, mostly young people, took to the streets. Some of them even stormed the country's parliament. One of the parliament gates was set on fire. The immediate trigger for the protests was the Nepal government's decision to ban several social media platforms. But the young people on the streets say raising a banner of revolt against widespread corruption in Nepal. Things spun out of control to such an extent that the army had to be deployed in capital Kathmandu, and a curfew has been clamped. This after the police used water cannons, tear gas and rubber bullets to contain angry mobs. Reports suggest protests have also spread to other parts of the country. In Pokhara, demonstrators reportedly vandalized the Chief Minister's office. Prime Minister KP Oli, clearly feeling the hate, has called an emergency cabinet meeting. So just why are the people of Nepal so angry with the government? Several social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, X, WhatsApp, LinkedIn and Snapchat have been inaccessible since Friday after the government blocked 26 unregistered platforms. The government's directions came on the back of a Supreme Court order last year. The social media giants had been asked to comply with a set of directions, including establishing a point of contact and naming a resident grievance officer and compliance officer. The ban has sparked outrage across Nepal, with people accusing the government of stifling freedom of expression. They're also angry about the government's failure to root out the pervasive culture of corruption in the country. Since the ban came into force, videos contrasting the struggles of ordinary Nepalis with the children of politicians flaunting luxury goods and expensive vacations have gone viral on TikTok. Interestingly, Chinese-owned TikTok is one of the few social media apps still operating in Nepal. There are around 13.5 million Facebook users and 3.6 million Instagram users in Nepal. These social media sites are not only sources of news and entertainment and an avenue for self-expression, but scores of people rely on them for their business and livelihood. But what began as a protest against the ban on social media apps soon turned into a massive anti-corruption demonstration and what the people are calling the government's authoritarianism. The government says it respects freedom of thought and expression and is committed to creating an environment for their protection and unfettered use. Earlier, the Nepal government had blocked access to Telegram, arguing that the secure platform was being used for online fraud and money laundering activities. The government claims the ban is on account of social media companies' failure to ensure regulatory compliance. The protesters say it's an assault on freedom of expression and a brazen act of censorship aimed at suppressing critical voices and dissent. They also see it as an opportunity to hold the government accountable, as the country continues to be plagued by deep-rooted corruption, income inequities, widespread nepotism, years of political instability, and failure of successive governments to address the public's grievances and prioritize the issues that matter to the youth. Could this Gen Z revolution turn into a bigger people's movement, triggering political change of the kind we've seen in India's neighborhood in the past, in Myanmar, Sri Lanka and Bangladesh? Has the KP Oli government in Nepal been put on notice?
Those individuals who are widely considered to be the truly great and profound intellectuals of Nepal, they genuinely don't even pause to think deeply about what they are truly going to say. The poor, unfortunate souls. Here we are, diligently discussing crucial matters such as national borders, fundamental sovereignty, essential independence, and personal freedom. But if a person is not truly free themselves, if their very own mind is not genuinely free, if they cannot think independently and critically, then how can they possibly bring about any meaningful or lasting freedom for anyone else?
Speak up! As soon as we arrived here, we had planned to hold a peaceful protest, friends. But right after coming here, we witnessed something terrible, really terrible. The police misbehaving. They're forcibly shooting at the youths. This is not even a little bit like a peaceful protest. The people in power above shouldn't be allowed to do this. This is completely wrong. If the youths aren't even allowed to engage in some anti-corruption activities, then there's no freedom of speech. No right to speak here at all. Every minute we're witnessing incidents of people being shot here. This is absolutely wrong. Major news channels need to show these things. These issues need to be raised in front of important people. Every life is valuable, whether it's a big person or a small person. No one should be allowed to do this, not even a little. If a politician gets beaten up or someone throws something at them, it becomes a big deal. But we don't express our anger like that. We pay from our own homes to support these leaders. And yet our friends keep getting shot. Whose justice is this supposed to be? In Nepal, we don't get what we seek or choose. We have to go abroad for jobs, just to make a living. And here, when we protest, some of us have to take bullets, while everyone else just sits quietly. This is not right. Everyone should raise their voice against this. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, let's go across to our guest. Joining me on Global Pulse tonight is Dr. Dipesh Kesi, a security analyst and activist. He joins us live from Kathmandu, Nepal's capital, which really is practically under siege today thanks to these protests. And we also have with us Dr. Wael Awad. He's a senior international journalist and president of the South Asia chapter of the Foreign Correspondents Club. Thanks very much to both my guests for joining me. Dr. Dipesh Kesi, let me begin with you. We are given to understand that an emergency cabinet meeting is currently underway as we speak, being chaired, of course, by the Prime Minister himself, and that Nepal's Home Minister Ramesh Lekhak has actually offered to resign in the course of this meeting, taking moral responsibility for these protests. Do you have any update on this? Can you confirm this for us?
So far, 19 people are killed. The police sources has updated, and curfew has been imposed in the main cities of Nepal, Kathmandu, Itahari, and other cities. The cabinet has not decided about the resignation of Home Minister, but the people's demand is that the KP Oli should resign, because this government has been involved in many corruption cases, including the embossed number case. That means they are erasing the Devanagari alphabet from the vehicles, and many corruption cases has been raised so far. So people's demand is against the KP Oli government and the corrupt political parties.
You know, let me understand this fully before I go across to Dr. Wael Awad. Dipesh, you know, the trigger for the protest seemed to be the ban on 26 social media platforms. But now we are hearing people on the streets and like yourself talking about corruption in Nepal. Why do you think people have decided to come out on the streets now to talk about the issue of corruption?
Nepalese peoples are patient. They are so patient that they tolerate many brutal things before. In the past 5 months before, there was people's protest and dozens of people were killed. And there were many corruption issues people were raising. Now, they are banning the social medias, not only because of the registration issues, but because of the corruption issues that people started to raise against them. And they were terrified because of that. And because of that, and in protest, you have seen that the corruption issue has been raised. The corrupt political leaders and their families are living the lavish life. They have also, there was social media campaign before, and the campaign is in peak about the lavish life of the corrupt political parties. These leaders are corrupted. These are always clarified, and the people are clear about their corruption. So people tolerate in the before, but they started to revolt against them. And the young people come to the street. Look, the teen people, the people below the 30 years, 20 years, are in the street, and they are killed by this government. Before, in the past, there were many protests, many changes, big andolans like that. But these numbers were not killed at the time. But in one day, within 1-2 hours, 19 people have been killed, and there were some updates also. Many students, many youths are seriously injured, and the number may be increased.
Okay, so Dipesh, we have a very important update coming in. You mentioned earlier that at least 19 people have been killed. You're also talking about the brutal crackdown by the police on these protests. The army has in fact been deployed, and as we speak, we are getting reports that the Home Minister of Nepal has indeed resigned, taking moral responsibility for these protests. It's also very important what you're saying. You're saying that the initial protest online was against corruption in the government. When the youth started raising their voice against corruption on social media platforms, the government, using the excuse of regulatory compliance, decided to crack down on dissent and banned these apps. Any thoughts on why the Chinese TikTok has been spared?
The Chinese TikTok was banned in the past, and they registered. Even the Viber has not been banned because they registered. But registration issues is not the main issues. The main issues is that the people, especially youth, raise voice in the social media. That's why they challenge the social media. They try to ban the platform where people raise their voice, especially youth raise their voice. Yesterday, KP Oli, in his party, he changed the rule in his party. He is an autocratic ruler now. There was a rule in his party, only 2-term president. But he changed that. He is like Xi Jinping and Putin. Like, he has been changed. And the people are very, very dissatisfied with Oli. Because of corruption, because of his activities, he is so unpopular. Even Deuba is unpopular. Main leader, main political parties, the leaders are unpopular. Not only Oli and Deuba.
You've made some very important points. KP Oli must resign. He is an autocratic ruler. People are likening him to Xi Jinping and Putin, and they're extremely dissatisfied with his rule. Let me bring in Dr. Awad at this point. So thank you for waiting patiently. What do you make of these scenes that we have witnessed on the streets of Kathmandu today? Our guest from Nepal says that the ban on social media in the name of regulatory compliance is just an excuse. The purpose of the KP Oli government was to crack down on dissent, as people have been raising their voice against corruption and his quote-unquote misrule.
Well, I think ever since the removing of the monarchy from Nepal in 2008, we have witnessed the instability in Nepal because of the weak coalition government over the years, and which have been plagued by violence, by uncertainty, and by also the corruption and malpractice. That is for sure. It's plaguing Nepal society, where you can see the largest scale of unemployment and inflation, which have really raised to such a level that Nepal has been now among the 100 countries of the maximum corruption in the world. So therefore, these protests remind me, Neha, of Egypt when Hosni Mubarak was caught during the Arab Spring, and he asked his government employee, what do you think of these people demonstrating in the street of Cairo? He said, well, don't worry, sir, we have only 10,000 people demonstrating. But actually, he forgot there were 10 million Egyptian unemployed in the street. So therefore, when you see the reflection and the sentiment in the street of Nepal, it gives a clear indication that these people are not only demonstrating for because of the ban, it is because of the plague uncertainty of their future, of especially the youth. And now, Neha, after killing such a large number of people, we don't know what are the forces, who are the forces behind. Is it going the way Sri Lanka or Bangladesh? I think there are some vested interest nation wanted to see instability in Nepal, and I don't think that demonstration will end with the resignation of the Home Minister.
It will not end with the resignation of the Home Minister. Therefore, Dr. Awad, do you think we're actually looking at an Arab Spring kind of situation where you may very well see the government falling and the man right at the top being forced to leave?
I think you can't control the people demonstration, and this is what's happening when there is unrest in the country, lots of chaotic situation. You can control a mob, parties, but you cannot control the mob. So once the mob take rule in the street, there will be lots of bloodshed, and the only way for the government is to go out and allow for a fresh election, because the scandals we have seen in Nepal history, we had more of the tax scandal, the tax settlement commission scandal, the corporation scandal in Nepal. There were many cases, even including the visa scandals, even including the refugees from Tibet. And the most interesting part, that the geopolitical importance of Nepal make it most vulnerable between two giant Asian, India and China, that many vested interest nations wanted to make instability much in Nepal, so they can also cause harm to the Chinese because of the Tibet issues.
It's very interesting you've brought up China. I want to expand on that, but a little later. Let me take this back to Dipesh. Dipesh, Dr. Awad is of the opinion that these protests will not stop with the resignation of the Home Minister. You earlier said KP Oli must resign. Dr. Awad seems to think that these angry protests will be hard for the authorities to contain, despite the fact that they're cracking down brutally. 19 people have been killed. The army has been deployed in Kathmandu. Do you believe that we are witnessing, some sort of a situation similar to the Arab Spring? Sri Lanka and Bangladesh are another two examples that come to mind. These are two countries where we saw the overthrow of governments after there was a lot of anger and resentment amongst the people who decided to take to the streets and stormed the seats of power. Today, these protesters actually breached the Parliament complex, set one of the gates on fire. Do you believe there is so much anger among the people of Nepal today that they will not stop, the protests will not stop till they actually see KP Oli ousted from power? And are you not worried that there could be more violence and bloodshed in the days ahead?
Nehaji, these protests will not stop, I think, because of the serious corruption they did before and they are doing. Recently, we have raised the issue of the embossed number plate corruption issue, but they throw some illusions among the people, and they are doing these activities in the past, and they think that they do these activities and the people will be silent. But at this time, the patience, people will not be patient every time. And the people are killed, young people are killed. KPUL is saying give birth to three daughter or three sons for every couples. But his government has killed the young people, 19 years old, 20 years old. What is this? And the people are very angry. The protest will be continue, and these protests will be against the system also. Who knows? The system is in danger. The political system of Nepal is in threat now.
So tell me this, Dipesh, what exactly do the people want? They want KPOL to step down as Prime Minister and call for fresh elections?
Not only the issue of KPOL and Sherbadur Deoba and these political parties, the issue is there should be the corruption less country, and there should be employment, and there was many fraud scam in Nepal, the cooperative fraud scam. The people lost Arabs and Arabs rupees, and the government did nothing. People that go money, save money, return their money, and it should secure the freedom of the people, freedom of the youth. That is the voice of the people. And system, political, these kinds of political system is not suitable for Nepal.
Okay,
No
overhaul of the overall
any
system
government.
is what the people want. They are fed up of
Let
corruption and
will
issues
be-
like unemployment. Dipesh, we have a bit of a problem with your line. We will come back to you in just a moment. Dr. Awad, let me come back to you at this point. I mean, of course, there's a lot of resentment over income inequities, unemployment, corruption, and nepotism. People are talking about how ordinary Nepalis have to struggle on a daily basis while the children of politicians are leading lavish lives and going on expensive vacations abroad. There are TikTok videos going viral. But let me ask you this, since you mentioned China earlier, for a very long time it was a concern for India, for instance, seeing China exert so much influence over its neighbor Nepal and attempts, as many said, to turn it into a vassal state. What role, if any, do you believe China has in the current situation in Nepal?
I think China has been targeted. I think China is the main target for Nepal instability. The moment the government goes, because the Communist Party's involvement in the government, that also will give hands to removal of the influence of China. Because of this, that the Chinese have been worried. You remember during the Olympic Games where the Nepali government cracked down on the protesters from the Tibet, and they put them more than 15,000 people in jail. So there was a huge, worries and cautious in the Beijing because of the development in Nepal. They have been watching it for closely. They wanted to sign an agreement for extraditions of most of these people, but it's yet to be ratified, and the Nepalese were not under tremendous pressure. So therefore, I think China could be one of the main loser in this development. India also could be very careful, because see what happened in Bangladesh. You remember? I mean, everybody
Yes.
was surprised what happened. So what really are the vested interest nations who are trying to play with the democratic system in these countries? Because once the Maoists retired, and it was under the UN auspicious that they have made a government, the coalitions, and they dismantled their arms, disarmed them. So all these things took place. Now, this poor country with a very large youth population, I've seen them now increasing their numbers in the Gulf country where they are going seeking jobs. But as you said, people looking at the corruption in this country and watching the development and the families. This is exactly what happened in other parts of the world. So China, which is pouring lots of money because of the infrastructure project, it's also causing corruption to the top leaders in Nepal, and there is no accountability and responsibility for all those officers being corrupted. So I think the people of Nepal will face the difficulty time ahead, even if the government goes, because even removing of the government will not create jobs. It will create more instability. But nevertheless, people's voices should be heard, and the killing and the should be stopped. I mean, you don't imagine that within the few hours of the demonstration, we have this large scale of number being killed, despite the fact that the government is saying they are using rubber bullet and all, but even 100 injured, including policemen, more than 20 policemen injured. So therefore, there is a violence, and this violence is difficult to control. And China is watching very carefully the development, and I'm sure there will be lots of changes in Nepal if the government collapses.
Okay, but Dr. Awad, do you fear that Nepal could go the Bangladesh way? You mentioned Bangladesh earlier. Sri Lanka is another example that comes to mind. Bangladesh is more recent. Well, we saw, the Prime Minister being ousted. Sheikh Hasina had to flee the country amidst violent protests. But, Bangladesh has been in the throes of massive unrest and instability since then. The situation in many ways is still far from normal. Are you worried that Nepal could go the Bangladesh way?
Well, absolutely, there is, because of the political instability, because of the weak coalition in Nepal, that makes it very vulnerable for collapsing even economically and be more dependent on the aid from outside. So India also has to worry about the development there, because we don't know India where it will be heading for in case the Nepalese government collapse. What will be happen to the youth there? Whether India will step in to also help them, because India have been watching the development in its neighborhood, and this is also considered to be a very secure and security matter for Indian government, because of the large border with India and
porous border, yes,
infiltration porous border. So I think it is a worry time, and I don't think a changing of the government will have a stable government in the future. But anyway, the changes should come. But let's see, because it's too early to judge who is behind it.
Okay, I'm pretty sure New Delhi is watching this as closely as Beijing, though for different reasons. This could pose, security challenges for India, given our porous border with Nepal, a small but an important country in our neighborhood. Let me go back to Dipesh at this point. Dipesh, the question really is, okay, Dipesh, we also have Dr. Swaran Singh joining us on the show at this point in time. Dipesh, one quick question for you before I go across to Dr. Swaran Singh. The question is, doesn't Dr. Awad have a point that you may have this government collapsing, you may even have fresh elections in Nepal, but problems such as widespread and deep-rooted corruption and unemployment and income inequities will not disappear overnight. And people are already drawing comparisons with Bangladesh and worried that Nepal could go the Bangladesh way. What's your view?
There are threats and there are also possibilities, but Nepal is not Bangladesh. Nepal is different, and it will not go in the Bangladesh model. Maybe there are many vested interest parties and powers playing, but these kinds of protests are from the people's side, because peoples are fed up with such government and such activities, corruptions, and the brutal activities. They are against human rights like this. But the security threat is serious issue, but Nepal should handle the political parties, civil societies should be serious in this issue, and they should tackle as soon as possible. Otherwise, the country will be in trouble.
Well, we certainly hope that, Nepal does not go the Bangladesh way and we do not see civil unrest on the streets for much longer. Dr. Swaran Singh, Professor for Diplomacy and Disarmament at the Center for International Politics, School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, is also with us. Dr. Singh, your first thoughts on these violent protests that we've seen on the streets of Kathmandu. What the people are saying is that in the garb of cracking down on dissent and criticism of the government on the issue of corruption, the KPOL government has gone ahead and banned these 26 social media apps. And that is why people are so angry. They have taken to the streets, but the issue goes far beyond social media. This is about extreme dissatisfaction with what they are calling the misrule of the KP Oli government. In fact, even as we are told that the Home Minister of Nepal may have resigned, our panelists are saying that will not be enough. KP Oli must go. What are your thoughts on what we are witnessing?
I think clearly, Neha, the anger is very clearly expressed against the three main leaders, Madhav Nepal and Prachanda and KP Sharma Oli, uh, who are constantly rotating among themselves while sustaining enormous political instability and indecisiveness for several years now. And that has created a whole lot of problems of deceleration in terms of economic growth, projects. Corruption is again the main focus here. And the surprise is that this whole process of government asking digital regulations to be followed in terms of these companies appointing local designated grievance redressal officers, compliance officers, and so on, is a 1 year old story. And now even they had given 7 days, so there was zero preparedness, knowing if they banned 26 applications on the eve of Dashera, when Nepalese are around the world and want to be constantly connected with people at home, and that digital natives, as we call Generation Z, is used to constantly being in communication with each other and not preparing for what kind of law and order platforms immediately. And taking a similar exercise, asking online platforms companies to ensure digital accountability. We used Income Tax Act, Information Technology Act of 2008, Section 69. We were very selective in calibrating which subject selected URLs are to be blocked, which Twitter accounts are to be blocked. And what happened? India received only op-eds of criticism. India received at best some court cases, and UN rapporteur was saying India's actions are not in line with human rights, etc., etc. We managed it very well, and that example was clearly in front of Nepal, and the whole anxiety, anger that Nepalese youth today has against corruption was well known to the government, and they should have prepared it better to see 16 people, as media is now saying, dead and about more than 100 badly injured, is unacceptable behavior as a responsible government in that sense. And my concern also is, if it prolongs, it will not only become more difficult for the government to handle it, because more criminals, anarchists, and other protesters, opposition will all piggy bank. The anger could also get deflected towards India. And in that sense, I
Yes.
think it's going to be more complicated every next day. And I hope they immediately take some drastic measures. Home Minister has resigned, as you just mentioned. I don't know if resignation is accepted by KP Sharma Oli. There has to be some clear announcement of whether they want to declare a certain date for next elections to have the fresh government in place. Something more sort of drastic to satisfy the protesters on the ground, because these are young people and they could themselves be waylaid by other the people who would like to piggy bank, as I said, on the protests continuing. And we can't afford Nepal derailing further into chaos. It has been every few years there are problems and protests in Nepal, and I think there has to be a way to deal with those. India so far is not a target of their anger, but it could become, because anything that continues in terms of chaos in any neighboring country. You gave examples of Sri Lanka, where US aid was supposedly doing something. National Endowment for Democracy was blamed for doing something. Then we had Pakistan, where Prime Minister himself said United States was involved in dethroning his government. Again, Sheikh Hasina said the same thing. CIA was involved in dethroning her. Here, at least in Nepal, so far, there is no clear imagination of regime change. Army is not showcasing any anger or attempt to coup here, the way it happened in Bangladesh. So I think situation is manageable, but some drastic action needs to be
Needs
taken.
to be
Maybe
taken. In fact, Dr. Singh, Dr. Awad made a similar argument earlier. He said that the protests will be virtually impossible to contain unless some drastic action is taken. KP Oli will eventually perhaps have no choice but to resign and call for fresh elections. But I want to ask you this from India's perspective. Yet another country in India's neighborhood is experiencing massive civil unrest. Number one, are you concerned that Nepal could go the Bangladesh way? Because even after Sheikh Hasina had become very unpopular at home and was ousted from power in the middle of a very violent protest and revolt against her, fact is that no political or economic stability has yet been restored in Bangladesh. And two, what do you think this unrest in Nepal means for India and its own security? Would New Delhi be worried?
I think there is definitely reason for New Delhi to be alert as to how things are unfolding in Nepal. And it is not simply because of porous border, it is also because large number of Nepalese live in India. And I'm sure most of you know they are about 30,000 plus pensioners in Nepal from Indian Army. The connection is very different here. So if there is a unrest, anxiety, anger, it will get deflected, and India invariably becomes the target of all these smaller neighbors of India. Whenever there are chaos continuing there, some of that anger gets deflected to India in any case. So India will have to be very careful. And whether the protests are going to continue and create bigger chaos, it may not have direct connection to American establishments, but the fact that these social media portals, most of them are controlled by American companies, they may have their own reasons. Companies need to pay taxes, need to be accountable in any situation like this. Somehow escape those responsibilities. They need to be really held accountable for these things, and those simple commercial interests themselves could also be sort of edging and egging and creating a chaotic situation in Nepal. That is something which we should also be very carefully looking and judging, that it need not be necessarily the governments from abroad trying to derail political situation in Nepal, but incrementally several smaller companies together might create that chaos, and anger will get deflected to India, as I'm saying again and again, because India invariably is a favored target for any instability and anger to be deflected on New Delhi.
And since you have to leave the show in a few minutes, I need to ask you another question, Dr. Swaran Singh. Dr. Awad brought this up earlier, that New Delhi is not alone in this. Another country that will be looking at this Nepal situation extremely closely, though for very different reasons, is China. A lot has been said over the years about China exerting undue influence over Nepal. Some also link it to the corruption in the top political brass of that country. How do you look at it? What do you think this means for China?
I think, Neha, it's a slightly different situation because KP Sharma Oli, who's currently the Prime Minister, Nepal has produced in its history so far. So that could be seen either in terms of Chinese influence, in terms of how he will deal with the crisis. Second, which is also coincidental, that TikTok is the one which is not banned right now because
Still operating in that country, yes.
Yeah, they had complied with the requirements and regulations 2080 in advance. They were banned beforehand for 9 months, and then of course in August last year that ban was lifted. So right now all the video that are going viral are using TikTok.
Yes.
Somehow be seen as China's access to how the movement is unfolding and how this is connecting with each other. So there is definitely a China connection, if not China angle in that sense, in what is happening right now in Nepal, both at the level of Prime Minister and of course at the level of TikTok, which is the connector right now among all the people on the ground.
All right. And final thoughts, as New Delhi continues to watch this situation closely, should we be worried? Like I said, that this could go the Bangladesh way. We saw a very violent ouster of, governments and prime ministers and presidents in Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, for instance, in the last few years.
Sorry, is that question to me, Neha?
Yes, Dr. Singh, before we let you go.
Sorry, I think it's a collective situation in India's neighborhood, as I mentioned, from Nepal to Sri Lanka to Bangladesh, which collectively is something we should take note of as to how these, sort of strange protests that erupt suddenly can continue for such a longer period of time and can, of course, also sustain themselves in terms of creating enormous chaos. In case of Sri Lanka, for a longer period of time, almost bringing down the government, change of government in Bangladesh. How it is that leaderless movements using are able to be so effective as to completely derail the day-to-day functioning of the government, which seems to be in control a day before. And I think that is something that India must look more carefully. Potentially, India could also face similar situation because India's youth also is very tech savvy, is very connected all the time. And if we see how these movements unfold in neighboring countries, and I think we should learn lessons in advance. And in case we can provide an example, like I mentioned, India's example of 2021 should have been understood by Nepalese to undertake their exercise. Both as an example and, of course, as a helping hand to neighboring countries, India should be sort of thinking of what strategies India can have in supporting some of these neighboring countries in situations like this.
Well, most certainly India needs to have a strategy for what's unfolding in Nepal as we speak. Thanks very much, Dr. Swaran Singh, for joining us on the show. Let me go back to the other guest, Dipesh. Let me come back to you. Every time we see angry protests like this, whether it was the Arab Spring in Egypt, what happened in Bangladesh, now in Nepal, there are some who begin to ask this question: how can a leaderless movement become so big and gain so much momentum of its own that it ends up in the ouster of the government of the day? Are these movements really organic, or is somebody propping up these protesters? Time and again, we hear conspiracy theories about Washington being involved or the CIA being involved. We heard a lot of that in the context of Bangladesh. How do you, look at it when people ask those questions?
There are many assumptions, and protest is from the young generation. With these main political leaders of Nepal, especially KP Oli, Sher Bahadur Deuba, and Prachand, people, they seek change and they seek new faces in the main political parties and from the new political parties also. And they also seek reform in constitution. They seek reform in the system also. There are many corruptions, and in these electoral system, none of the parties are getting the full majority. And because of that, Nepal is facing instability time and again. And because of instability, economic problem, unemployment, and different kind of corruptions are here. And that's why there should be change, reform in political, social, and economic system also.
Okay, you're saying that this is definitely an organic movement and a people's movement because people are so fed up of corruption and political instability in the country, not to mention unemployment and income inequities. Dr. Awad, I'd love for you to take that question. All the conspiracy theories that we hear, for instance, many believed that the CIA was behind the ouster of Sheikh Hasina, and then they said many who held this belief felt validated when Muhammad Yunus was sort of installed as the interim head of the government. They said, "We told you so."
Well, I think there is, as Muhammad Hassanin Haikal, the Egyptian writer and historian, said once, that I do not believe in conspiracy theory, but I don't believe in coincidence as well. So neither both can be. So there is nothing coincidence in the development in Nepal, Niha. It is the people of Nepal definitely are aspiring for a better livelihood, and for also, remember, in Nepal there are 7.5% of the populations are living outside Nepal, and they rely on the social media. And remember also, there is when the development took place in Sri Lanka and Bangladesh, that is also an aspiration for the people of Nepal, that they can topple the government, they can change, and certain definitely civil society, civil organization would be taking full advantage to flare up the situation, to make it into a situation of uncertainty. So I do not want to blame it, but my worries here is that yes, there is definitely an aspiration, and there is aspiration among the public of Nepal to have a better life, to have a better jobs, and to get employment, and also send to the trial all the officials who are being corrupted. That is for sure. But who will hijack the street inspiration and all? That is the worry time. That is where I come through. And let us remember also, nobody give you free social media network platform, free of course or low cost, just for the sake because they love us, and they love, because we know in the new geopolitical changes, there is no more occupation of countries. There is no more invasions of countries. It is more of social unrest, more of binding these countries, like labor bonding to the international, monetary funds or World Bank, where they will be relying more on the external help till they survive. So they will drag you for the rest of your life. So I think what the Nepali government and the Nepali parties should be awakened and understand that sentiment of the street, and develop kind of a coalition and compromise before it goes out of control. This is the level of the disruption is too high, and there is the curfew right now in many places, and that also will be a lethal weapon, a lethal forces using by the government. It will give them, fuel for the hand of the demonstration, that they will not compromise till the government go.
You're right. Government using lethal force is only likely to backfire on them and deepen the anger amongst the people. 19 people dead in a single day. Now, obviously, we're looking at a very brutal crackdown by the authorities. The fact that now the army has been deployed in Nepal's capital, this will not go down well with the protesters. Chances are anger is only going to swell further. But Dr. Awad, I want to ask you one more question. Dr. Swaran Singh in the earlier segment raised this point about how he believes that India needs to learn its lessons from what's happened in Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and is now happening in Nepal. What's your view?
Yeah. Yes, India has to be careful, because see, the problem is that those governments who've been changing, they immediately become anti-India, and that is the development. Why India should be there? Why should be anti-India sentiment in these countries? And I think India has been contributing a lot to the Nepalese welfare. They have been paying for the infrastructure, they're giving donations, and even at the time of crisis. But here you go. It's nothing to do with the government of India. India was taken by surprise when Bangladesh went the other way around. So therefore, I think India has to be careful and address all the issues concerned. And I think India is watching the development, because it's not an easy things to come nor take part in any kind of a demonstration. India would call for more restraint, call for more, a coalition and understanding among the people, and peace and tranquility is the prime important for India. India cannot afford that neighbor goes for instability and radicalism will start, and extremism. That will definitely have a huge impact on the India future.
All right, Dipesh, I will give you the last word as our guest from Nepal. I mean, our thoughts and prayers really are with the people of Nepal today. 19 people have lost their lives. 19 families have been bereaved. Like I said earlier, we now have a confirmation that the Home Minister has resigned. But would you say that nothing short of KP Sharma Oli stepping down and calling for fresh elections would be enough to satisfy the angry protesters?
I don't think there will be a fresh election. The fresh election is not an ultimate solution. The solution is the reformation in the country's political system, economic system. Some political parties are also demanding for the fresh election. Election is not only the solution. I have already mentioned that they did big corruptions, and their action was against the constitution also. For example, the issues related to the erasing Devanagari lipi from the vehicles. This is against the constitution. Such activities were imposed by this government and these political parties also. So the people's voice should be heard, and the political parties should address the people's voice, especially the voice of youth.
All
Yeah.
right. Will KP Oli and his government listen to the voice of the youth? Because clearly the youth is very angry. It's being called the Gen Z revolution because this protest is being spearheaded by the youth of Nepal who are fed up of corruption, who are fed up of unemployment, who are fed up of nepotism, and they certainly are very angry about the social media ban that has been imposed by this government. What is the Prime Minister going to do next? These protests, it seems, are not going to die down anytime soon. What lies ahead for the people of Nepal and the KP Sharma Oli government at this point in time remains a big question as the rest of the world, especially the neighborhood, closely watches that situation. On that note, Dipesh Kesiwal, Awad, thank you so much to both of you for joining me on Global Pulse tonight.
Thank you, Najib.
Thank you for having me.
Well, deep unrest in Nepal. We will continue to follow this story very closely here on Global Pulse. Thanks so much for watching.